I was still criticizing him, his phone usage, his parenting. We had a little boy. I was criticizing him for the way he drove, his friendships, um, the shows he would watch. And I wasn't giving him enough space. I didn't understand the concept at all of either self care or staying on my own paper.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your husband's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about in-laws versus outlaws and why only one is wanted. My guest, Jessica, was sure that the only way her marriage would ever get fixed was if her husband finally opened his eyes and started treating her better. But she did some experiments herself, and her prayers were answered in an unexpected way. Now he writes her love notes that make her heart sing. She's going to tell us what she did so that you can do it too. But first, let's talk about in laws and outlaws. Okay, confession time. I don't have much to say about outlaws. I just love that joke about how the difference between outlaws and in laws is that only outlaws are wanted. That's because in-laws can be annoying and get on your very last nerve. Your in-laws could be nosy or overbearing or passive aggressive, which can cause stress in your marriage. But you can't get rid of them either, much as you might like to sometimes. Or is that me I'm thinking of? Well, not anymore. Now, I genuinely really like all of my in-laws, but I used to find fault with them like it was buried treasure. Mostly I was defensive and probably afraid that I wouldn't be accepted into the Doyle family. Turns out I never needed to worry about that because they're a great bunch. But maybe your in-laws are not so great and it's putting stress on your marriage. So then what? Here are three experiments you can do that may give you relief from that stress while still maintaining your dignity. Number one, assume the best. Assume the best. Allison felt enormous pressure from her in laws who expected her family to visit them a lot more than she wanted to visit them. And they were passive aggressive when they didn't get their way. She and her husband agreed they weren't going to be visiting for an upcoming major holiday. And she just dreaded the guilt inducing comments that she knew they were going to make when they found out. But with a little coaching, she decided to expect the best from them, to assume the best. When her in laws heard the news that they wouldn't be coming, she was still nervous, which seemed completely justified based on her previous experience, especially when her father in law said, "You're too busy to see us? Fine, you do you." But instead of defending herself or secretly rolling her eyes, Allison saw an opportunity to just take her father in law at his word. So she said, "Thank you for understanding and always being so supportive. That means a lot." When she did that, something shifted and she had the experience that her in laws actually were accepting of their decision not to visit. Also, Allison felt great about showing up with so much dignity and love for her in laws instead of having needless emotional turmoil and labeling them as passive aggressive. Number two, be vulnerable. Rachel had the opposite challenge. Her mother in law lived close by, but rarely engaged with her and the kids, choosing instead to keep her distance. Even when Rachel's husband invited his mother to come over for dinner, she mostly declined. Rachel felt sad that her mother in law stayed away and didn't have much of a relationship with her kids. So, using the skill of vulnerability, she left her mother in law a voicemail saying how she missed seeing her and that she would love to have her join them for dinner. It was so heartfelt that there was even a crack in her voice when she left the message. And do you know, the mother in law responded immediately that she would be there. And she came to dinner with the family and engaged with everyone. She seemed like a different woman. Number three, express what you're grateful for. Janine was quite unhappy with her sister-in-law, who had hurt her feelings many times, even trying to get her excluded from a family party with Janine's own family. Who wouldn't be hurt, right? She felt on guard whenever she interacted with that sister-in-law. But during coaching, when asked what she was grateful for about her sister-in-law, she shared vulnerably that she was grateful for the sister-in-law's care for her father, who could no longer walk or take care of himself. And Janine was not in a position to offer that care to her father, but the sister-in-law was, and she was doing a great job of taking care of him. And while sharing about what a gift that was, Janine got teary-eyed. And just moments ago, she had been talking about how she could never trust this sister-in-law. Once she found her gratitude and decided to express it to her sister-in-law, Janine softened in such a way that despite the hurt, she shared that she felt a lot of love for her sister-in-law. Now, none of these three women are saints. They are just mere mortal women like you and me who took the high road with their in-laws and created a much better experience than the one they were having previously. So it's interesting to think about what might be possible if you decide to experiment with one of these approaches when you are interacting with your in-laws. How would it shift the family dynamics in a way that feels lighter and more relaxed for you if you used the 6 intimacy skills when you interact with your in-laws? You might create connections that make you feel that your in-laws are just as wanted as outlaws. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest, Jessica, was sure that the only way her marriage would get fixed was if her husband would finally open his eyes and start treating her better. But she did some experiments herself, and her prayers were answered in an unexpected way. Now he writes her love notes that make her heart sing. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. Jessica, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to hear your story.
Thank you, Laura. I'm very delighted and honored to be able to talk with you.
Oh, great. Well, take us back to the bad old days. What was happening in your marriage?
Well, before the bad old days, there was the good old days. My husband and I met at church. We've been friends for years. I didn't know, but he had secretly been marveling at me and was very in love with me for years. And
Mm.
I always considered him a friend and my favorite person to talk to. And he was just so full of light and goodness and gentleness, courteousness. He was so tender. He was so spiritually devoted. And he treated me with such care and cherishing. Well, everyone at our church thought that we ought to be married, and this was all going, I was very oblivious. But fast forward, I came to fall deeply in love with him, and we were bonded from the get-go, bright-eyed. He would write these beautiful, sublime, healing love songs to me. I would pour out poetry to him. We hated to be separated. We couldn't wait to be married, and just completely delighting and adoring one another. So we were married, and soon after that, I discovered that we were in a group that I thought at the time was somewhat cultish. And I am a very investigative, intense academic personality. So I dug in and I found all the dirt and corruption in the movement. I was very afraid, terrified. shaken to the core. And I begged and pleaded with my husband, we have to get out. I cajoled him. I pressured him. I sent him podcast after podcast, YouTube after YouTube video, um, just article after article, book after book, scripture after scripture. And my husband was in law school at the time and
Mhm.
working full time. So
Mm.
he was immersed and he became overwhelmed with just the avalanche of information I was barraging him with. And he would get flooded and he would, understandably so, become resistant. And I thought he was a coward. And I thought that he wasn't facing reality and that he was just naive. And I would tell him so. And my daily diet of information was fear, you
Mm.
know? And so I was just feeding on all the fear and all the dirt. And my beauty and gladness was dissipating. And I had become shrunken in with fear.
Mm.
He would become so flooded that he would have to leave and he would stay elsewhere. We still had a lot of sexual passion in those days and still a lot of snuggling and closeness, but it was so tense. There was a lot of tension and arguments, explosions. And I just praise my husband now for how he handled it because he was really, it was very, I was very overwhelming for him.
Oh.
Well, I guess to not get too deep into it, fast forward 5 years, he and I have been married about 6 years. And I had done a lot of work in that area and had become more spacious and easygoing regarding our spiritual differences. I was far less terrified and I had begun to see the good in the group as well. And I also had come to a place where I felt like we didn't have to be so enmeshed that, in the really bad old days, I thought we had to be on the same page about everything. Oh God, I would pray, bring us to unity and get us to be on the same page. And I thought that we had to be so perfectly aligned in every idea. But we don't. And so that part of the spiritual part had kind of cleared up, kind of, but I was still criticizing him, his phone usage, his parenting. We had a little boy. I was criticizing him for the way he drove, his friendships, the shows he would watch. And I wasn't giving him enough space. I didn't understand the concept at all of either self-care or staying on my own paper. So self-care to me, I was in such a religiously dogmatic, I think, community that would kind of roll their eyes and hold self-care in contempt, saying that it was a worldly concept, selfish, the idolatry of me time. And so even though I so desperately needed to have fun and just, let myself enjoy, I sometimes I would, but I would always have this underlying sense of guilt. I should be doing something productive. I should be reading something. I should be growing somehow. So I was becoming depleted and living by a to-do list, and life was becoming pretty grim. I had moments of joy and we had moments of closeness, but overall, I just was not happy or pleasant. My husband said that he missed me, the me that he married.
Oh.
Oh, yes. And I did a lot of name calling and had a lot of resentment toward him. I also just, I would, throughout our entire marriage, I just tried to gobble down as much marriage advice I could, but nothing was working. It would work for a little bit, and it would actually sometimes add more pressure to me because I would read, listen, and then I felt like, oh, Russell has to hear this. So I send him the article, or I'd send him, here I was again, sending the YouTube video or the podcast, and he wouldn't listen oftentimes, not because he was a jerk, because it wasn't, he always said, Jessica, I never can please you. And I'd rather us talk about it together. I don't want to hear someone else talk about it. I want to hear you. but I wasn't able to hear his heart message wanting to connect. I just thought that he was being lazy and liked playing his phone games when he came home from work.
Right? Like uncaring. It can come off as like, yeah, then you don't care about this marriage because you're not willing to listen to anything, to grow or do any of the work. I'm the only one working on this. Is that, I mean, yeah, it
Yes.
feels so lonely. It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very lonely. Very lonely.
Yeah. So he wasn't open to that. Or I mean, he was, I mean, I get that he was saying this kind of a sweet, he had the sweetheart message, like, oh, let's just you and I talk about it instead of, and he wasn't able to listen. And it's something we hear so commonly, right? Like the husbands won't read the books. The husbands don't want to go to marriage counseling. The husbands don't
Yeah.
want to look at the videos or whatever. And it can make you, I did with me, like so much more frustrated because it was like, here's what he should do. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you were feeling the same way.
Oh, yeah. And he said something one time. We went to the park with our son, and there was a double swing, and he and I were swinging, and we were laughing. And it had been a long time that I had laughed with him. I was usually just kind of disgruntled and unpleasant. And I was laughing with him, and he's like, "This is our couples therapy,
Oh,
just swinging together." And something
so
stuck
cute.
with me. Yeah, that stuck with me.
Oh, I love that. So what were the things you were really wanting him to do? Like the things you're reading in the books, the marriage books or whatever, that you felt like he just wasn't doing?
Um, I wanted him to accept my influence. I wanted him to notice what I needed before I even expressed my desire. Um, I don't know if that's in the marriage books, but I
But you wanted it. Yeah, as a mere mortal woman. That's what I mean,
yeah,
I remember wanting that too. So yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. I
Yeah.
wanted the dreaded State of the Unions. I wanted, what else did I want?
So by State of the Union, do you mean you wanted to sit on the couch and kind of just talk about all the issues
Yeah,
and get them resolved, hash them all
yeah,
out? Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
we need to talk, and
And
this
he
is how
didn't
you're.
he didn't want to do that.
Oh no, absolutely not. He wanted to have fun and delight with me.
Yeah. Oh, imagine that. Yeah, yeah. So cute. You're so accountable in the way you tell it now, Jessica. So it's you're already like you've already busted yourself. So it's really sweet. So was there a point where you just thought, okay, we can't go on like this. Like this is really getting bad.
Yeah. There was a time he was going away for the weekend to a wedding. He was a groomsman. And we had gotten into some sort of argument. I don't even remember what it was about. And I railed against him. And I was just calling him names right in front of my little 3-year-old son, who was the most tender, precious, sensitive, like his dad. And um, I just said, I don't want to be with you anymore. You're not psychologically aware. You're not emotionally intelligent, and I just think I would be happier and more fulfilled with someone else. And I want to separate. And I'm glad you're going away for the weekend. It was so ugly, Laura, so ugly. And my husband, um, at one point, he took my hand and he said, can we just part, with some love and peace?" And he prayed. I used to criticize his prayers all the time. He prayed, "God, please protect Jessica, Noah, and please help our marriage." And I remember, kind of sighing and being huffy and thinking, what's going to help our marriage is if you start treating me like your bride and not some silly prayer. And I said, "Yeah, I'm in." And I also remember seeing my son's face though. And I was just, cut to the heart. I can't keep doing this to my son. And my husband left. This just goes to show you never know what's going on deep into someone, because I looked so hard and frigid and contemptuous, but deep down, I loved that prayer. And I later that night did pray, "God, if you even hear me, I, can you please send me some sort of resource? Because I'm done with all the marriage advice. I'm done. Um, Nothing's comforting me anymore. Nothing's resonating. I'm burned out. If there's something, it's like this much faith I prayed with." And that was the breakdown before the breakthrough.
Oh, wow. It was. Okay. So, and I mean, this is a lot of pain you're in. You're looking at your son's face and just feeling like you don't want to continue to inflict this pain on that little tender soul. All right. So what happened? What happened?
Okay. So then there wasn't a light from heaven. I just Googled, best
Yeah.
marriage podcasts and got a whole host of them. And I started on my walk listening to them. And here we go again, just this pressure. Oh, I've got to send this to Russell. And I felt anxious again. I felt heavy. And then I saw Empowered Wise, okay. So I clicked on it and I started listening and I put it down to one speed because I'm a podcast listener. So I'm used to listening at 1.5 to two speed, Laura.
Oh,
This I noticed, wow, I'm listening at one speed and I listened to interview after interview while I was doing my chores, while I was driving, while I was taking my walk, even when I was falling asleep. And there was something so curative and healing about the podcast and your reassuring, gentle voice. The women, I was so impressed with the caliber of women. They were so eloquent, they were wise beyond their years. They were taking personal responsibility, but there wasn't a self loathing. That's because I've heard women beat themselves up before and say, "Oh, I'm so horrible. My husband's so wonderful." But there's something missing. This was, it wasn't like humiliating. Yes, I felt was being humbled, but I wasn't humiliated. And my eyes were being open to how controlling I had been, but I didn't feel like shame on you, you nag, like I have in times
oh,
past.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and
That's all you
also,
had. All you had was nagging. That's all you knew. Yeah.
yes.
Why should you be ashamed?
And yeah. And you were so reassuring. I thought, wow, this woman she's pro woman and pro man.
Mm.
She's pro self care and pro intimacy. This is it. So I quickly got your book. I just drank it up within a matter of days, The Surrendered Wife. And I got the workbook, The Empowered Wife. I put The Empowered Wife on hold um, at my library. And I listened to podcast after podcast. And I thought, I felt motivated. I didn't feel shoved. And I didn't feel like, okay, I should do this. I felt motivated. So,
You were inspired.
yes.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, it was not more exhausting hard work to fix your marriage at this point. This was actually feeling like it was nurturing you and giving you strength and encouragement. So I'm wondering what you decided to do differently. What was the first thing you decided to do differently that you remember than what you
Okay.
had been doing things in your marriage?
I think it was like the first day that I had started the book and I was sitting at the park with my son, I decided to go to a park that I loved. It's so enchanting. And I was still pretty forlorn and downcast in those days. So I was just sitting watching him play and just softly gazing at him. But I was so sad and kind of exhausted. But I remember allowing myself to feel without judgment, like you say, and to get in touch with my desires without suppressing them or judging myself. And I heard myself say, I don't know if it was a prayer or whatever, it was just a desire. I wish Russell would write to me again, like he used to. He does here and there, but it's so rare. And I miss that. Well, then driving home from the park, my son fell asleep and I was sitting in the car waiting for him to wake up and I was still reading that book, just drinking it up. It was like it wasn't like water. It was like sparkling pink lemonade. That's what it was just so delicious and tasty and refreshing. So I was drinking it and reading all of it. And I just was so overcome with sadness for how I had treated my beautiful husband.
Mm.
And I decided right then and there to send him a text. Um, and I said, I apologize. I said, beloved, which I hadn't called him in a long time.
Oh.
He still called me honey and sweetheart and darling. He still sent me texts with, wonderful emojis, but my text to him had become pretty cold and
Mm.
not a lot of emojis where, it just kind of was a picture of how I was toward him, just not very responsive. And anyway, so I sent him a text saying, I apologize for being disrespectful. Those, some years ago, I criticized and attacked and pressured and belittled you. I was censorious and officious, and I called you horrible names. I've apologized in times past, Laura, but I always would slip in, but you hurt me so much. It was always, and then I remember saying something like you're a creation of God, and I'm blessed and honored to be your wife. And it just flowed out. And I sent it to him and with a thank you for being such a benevolent father and so caring to me and for working hard to provide for us every day. And he wrote back, he was astounded. And he said, well, he's very easy to please. He said, wow, honey, amazing. Like he was just astounded and thanked me and poured out praise on me. Well, later that very night, he was downstairs. My husband's really good at self-care, and I used to castigate him for having a glass of wine, God forbid, and just relaxing every Thursday night. Well, we worked out something where he could have his time, and I grew there. But he was downstairs. I was upstairs cuddling with our son, and sure enough, my husband sent me a note, and it was the most exquisite, sublime piece of prose he'd written to me. It was like when we had first been dating. And I thought, this is working. I had a flashback to the park, expressing that desire to, God, whoever. And then I apologize for being disrespectful. I wasn't being manipulative. I apologize for being disrespectful. Then came the prose.
That is amazing. Now, this is a great distinction you make too. This wasn't about manipulation, like you, but it's not. I mean, you make it sound like it's pretty easy to just, apologize to your husband for how you've treated him, but it's really not, right? There's a huge amount of humility that takes. Like, how did you get yourself there? How did you get to the point where you really wanted to issue that apology authentically? Because it sounds very authentic to me.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe my husband, I do have it fairly easy, I think. I think some of the stories I've heard on your podcast are just they seem so impossible. My husband, I think he's willing. He's willing. On our honeymoon night, I remember hearing in my heart, stay close to him in your heart. Stay close to him in your heart. And I hadn't. He's just good at fostering intimacy. And I don't know. I just wanted to try. I wanted to try it.
And you were willing. Yeah. I mean, I really hear a transformation. I definitely can hear it from the way you're describing. And your vocabulary is wonderful, by the way. And all these words that you're describing about even just the look on your face. And, you described yourself being hard and frigid at one point. And then so that, I can imagine that apology just would take a lot of courage.
Thank you. I felt pretty and clean inside. I felt like my real self, my deep down best self.
Wow. So it felt good.
Oh, yes. It felt good and right. And he deserved it.
Wow. And he responded so beautifully, and you got that beautiful prose that you had been craving, you'd been desiring. And so intimacy is restored. Connection is really strong at your house from just like maybe being at the park that you love and thinking about your desire, and then being willing to extend this apology. Pretty great.
Yeah. So it was so motivating that I thought, all right, I'm going to go in now and I'm going to try the self-care. So I thought 20 items of frivolous. Oh my gosh, that was like a verboten word to me, frivolous. So frivolous fun. It was so hard for me to even think of 5, but just doing the exercise felt good. So I started doing tiny, inexpensive, seemingly inconsequential things. For instance, I would put on I was gifted with some face serum. And in times past, I'm sure I would have just saved it for later till it expired. Yeah. And I just started using it. And I put on our patio twinkling lights that are so lovely. Usually I just save them for the guests. But, when I'm downstairs, I'd like to have those lovely lights for myself. I would take deep cleansing breaths. I would give myself permission to not worry about a single thing. Um, I would, when I was reading books with my son, I would just settle down and enjoy him and enjoy the illustrations. I would pick books that I liked when I was a child. And I, instead of just reading the words and getting through it and checking it off, okay, he read 5 books today, I would enjoy the illustrations. Um, what else did I do? Of course, I listened to your podcast and um, what else? I have so many. Um, oh, yeah, I would turn off my notifications to preserve serenity. I would step into the present moment and just allow myself to be grateful. I
Mm.
started wearing a pretty little bracelet that I hadn't worn for years. Um, and just treating myself with more kindness. And those little things. Oh, and I started reading novels again. Not novels that I should read, novels that I wanted to read. Um, I mean, I had been doing that, but now I really didn't feel guilty. Just novel that I wanted to read. Did some word searches. I could go across the street. There's a beautiful inn, and just sit there and enjoy the whole atmosphere. Just let myself live again. I would light a candle instead of always saving it for later. No, I can light it now. I'd let myself be held by my husband. I would just hug my son. And I just was letting myself be nourished and cared for. And that there was such a change in my whole demeanor toward myself. No longer so criticizing and censuring and, you know, to-do list. In fact, I remember feeling so different because I remember hearing myself say, how did you take care of yourself today? Instead of, how much did you accomplish today? How much did you
Oh,
check off your to-do list?
oh,
So efficient and so productive. No, how did you take care of yourself? Wow. That showed me there's really an internal change happening here. Um, and it was kind of painful though, because I wanted every woman, all of my friends to read this. I wanted them so badly, especially in my, faith community. Sometimes they can be putting themselves last and thinking that,
mm,
they're being servants, but I see them get drained and I
yeah.
see them get kind of exhausted and I just wanted them so badly. I would feel so happy listening to the podcast and reading and practicing the skills, but also this grievous feeling. So instead of, I just said, okay, I'm not going to worry. I'm going to give myself permission to not worry and get caught up in all this needless emotional turmoil. And I'm just, God, if you hear me, here I am again praying, if you hear me, can you please send women my way? And sure enough, I mean, within 2 hours, I think, I don't think that's an exaggeration, that very day,
Wow.
a friend who I hadn't heard for months, I'd kind of forgotten about her. She texted me, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed you and everything." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, Erica, she is perfect for this. She's so receptive, and she doesn't have a lot of um, she's perfect for this." So I recommended it to her. She was very skeptical, and I reassured her. I was so skeptical at first. I thought, this is gimmicky. Is this like a multi-level marketing scheme? And I said,
Right?
this is different. This is different from every marriage podcast organization, everything. This is different. So she and I started practicing a little self-care together. And
Oh,
another woman bringing the empowered wife to church on Sunday. She showed some openness to it. My mom has noticed a difference in my countenance.
yeah.
Yeah.
I bet. I bet people have noticed a difference in your countenance. And what about your husband? He must have noticed this as well.
Oh, yes. So I didn't tell my husband I was in the group. I'm so used to telling him everything, which I think the wonder of your stuff is that this is just for me. Because everything that I would read, I would feel like I'd have to share with him. He has to know this. This is just for me. So I didn't tell him I'm in an Empowered Wives. He does know that I'm in a group that emphasizes self-care and relational skills, which is true because I'm practicing these skills in all my relationships now. Um, so he knows. In fact, I haven't been good at receiving, but I'm becoming much better at receiving. And I told him that there's a video series that I would really like in this group, but it's so, it's not in our budget. And maybe for Christmas, he said, get it, enjoy it. It's my Thanksgiving gift, get it. And so now instead of protesting or rebuffing or say, okay, this is my Christmas gift, I just thank you. And now I get to enjoy the video series.
Oh, you just received it graciously. You expressed your desires. Of course, he wants to be your hero and get it for you.
Yes.
Um, awesome, awesome. So you've taken to these skills just like a duck to water. It seems like they just really suit you, and you seem just so excited and invigorated. Were there any skills where you just thought, that one just, I don't know about that one? Like,
Well, okay, so gratitude is how I used to be filled with gratitude. And then I read a lot about toxic positivity. And I never wanted to invalidate someone and say, be grateful. I still feel that way.
yeah,
I don't want to tell someone who's deeply suffering, be grateful,
no, no.
But what I loved about you is you were so validating of the pain that we were in. And you were not superior and you weren't suck it up, buttercup. You held us in a safe, nurturing place. And and then and so you'd earned my trust. And I thought, I'm gonna try, changing my perspectives. And I'm gonna start with the gratitude uh, for him. So I wrote down all the things I was grateful for, and they just kept coming. And then I would text him what I'm grateful for. Small things, taking out the trash, big things, being so nourishing to our son. Um, forming him in such a way that he's going to be truly a good man,
Mm.
um, providing for us daily, just forgiving me. It was so easy to be grateful to my husband. And as I did that, though, what you focus on increases. I thought, I really have an outstanding husband. I remember when we were first engaged, I was driving and I said, "Oh my gosh, I get Russell!" And I felt like I was just going to jump out of my skin. And that had dissipated. I thought, I'm stuck and trapped, and I want a more psychologically aware husband. Now, with all the gratitude, I was like, wow, I get Russell. He is so outstanding. And I remember being at a church group once, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm husband bragging." And they said, "No, that's good. That's good that you're bragging about your husband." Um, so yeah, just the gratitude, and that spilled over in just becoming a grateful person. So becoming grateful about everything and grateful. I remember I was getting a little heated about my mother-in-law, who I love, but I was starting to get disgruntled. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to just say three things I'm grateful for about her. And I did, and it really helped me. So, just the gratitude. And Russell said, he's a very grateful person, but he just said, "You're so thankful. You're calling me to a higher standard." And he's just so our house now is a lot of thankfulness. And I think gratitude is so magical. It really does bring light within. And it's who I really am. So I had lost it, and I thank you because it's revitalized. And I know you keep it up, you have to keep it up. But um even being nervous about this interview, and I was just so a ball of nerves, and I started to practice gratitude, and that just it brings more peace and allows you to see it from a better perspective.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I got chills as you were describing, even finding three things about your mother-in-law that you're grateful for, like just always turning to it like a discipline. And I also love what you said
Yes.
earlier about how, yeah, you don't want to be just like suck it up, buttercup. You should be grateful, right? That's not what this is about, because the pain, the loneliness you were feeling, the isolation, the separation, that was real. And that's valid. And that's part of the human experience that we're having here. So we don't want to just dismiss it. But it also has been a great teacher in a way, because that pain led you to seek, and the seeking led you to gratitude. And here you are,
Yeah.
just doing an incredible job with choosing your
Yes.
focus so wisely now.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought, I had those moments of, oh, I wish I'd learned this sooner. I could have saved us so much heartache. I could have not pierced my husband with such horrific words and caused angst to my beautiful son. But I just started. I had to speak consolingly to myself and say I didn't know. Now
I
I
didn't know.
do, and it maybe I'll have more empathy for women who are suffering in marriages instead of, oh, I figured this out right away. No, I caused.
Wow.
And but So I think another thing that was hard for me was definitely relinquishing control. So, with regard to finances, my husband has always been the breadwinner, but I have always nitpicked about we got to save money, and everything was about saving money and very worried about money. And you said something about how women oftentimes we have a lot of feelings, and our husbands can be more logical about money. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. And I just let him buy what he wanted to buy. I stopped worrying. For our son's birthday, he wanted to choose a remote control car. And in times past, I would have jumped in there, found the least expensive. This is gonna just a shiny new toy. It's gonna be done. I would have just micromanaged the whole situation. And he kept asking me. I guess I've trained him to say, well, what should we get? And I said, whatever you think, honey. And he found a remote control car, and it turned out to be not that good of a car. Now I would have totally criticized him and let him have it. You should have done more research. I should have done the research. I'm so savvy about these. No, just duct tape. And he tried another one, and it also wasn't a good one. And then the third time, and again, duct tape. And the third time, it was a great remote control car. Our son loved it. And I just praised my husband. You did the right thing. Honey, online shopping is hard. It's hard to find in reviews. You, you're so wonderful. And we play with that car almost on a daily basis. That could have been such a source of contention. I could have been looking at that car and just rolled my eyes. But because I was practicing the skills and I looking at that car, I'm like, my husband, he got my son with some trial and error, something that he really loves. And I didn't have to butt in. I think another instance of relinquishing control. Sorry.
Yeah, you just let him be a mere mortal man. He's everyone's got the right to be wrong sometimes too, right? And
Yes.
I just wouldn't want anybody standing by and going, "Oh, you made a mistake," right? Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
It can really cost intimacy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he thanked me for being so kind to him. And
That
another,
was very kind. It was very courageous, I feel like, because I'm sure you had some fear coming up about, see, I do need to tell him what kind of car to buy. You see, I was right about that. But you chose instead to be respectful.
yeah.
Uh,
And something I love that you say is he'll have life lessons, not wife lessons.
yeah.
He's gotta learn for himself. Another part of relinquishing control. So I remember taking a walk, and I was listening to your podcast and just feeling so light and unburdened, and I was smiling. And then this family text thread started happening, and it was getting a little bit heated, and there was some confusion about a get together. And I realized I didn't even know I would do this. I would be the spokeswoman for the family for Russell knowing me, and I would jump in and I would fix the situation and I would just take care of business. And I thought, I'm just gonna back off. I'm gonna relinquish control here, and I'm gonna let Russell respond. Now, my husband is he's slow to, he doesn't make rash judgments. He thinks before he speaks. He's wise. And so about 2 hours later, he responded. I'm the type that likes to respond right away, delete the message, taken care of, checked off my list. Nope, I'm just going to back off and let him do it. I was kind of like, is he going to do it? And he did. A couple hours later, he responded to his mom with such an appropriate, impeccable, courteous, just right on response. And it showed, I didn't have to micromanage or jump in and fix and take care of things. No, this is a team. This is a partnership. And my husband's an intelligent, actually, he's much more gracious at times than I am. So that was a tiny example of backing off And then sure enough, he comes in and brings peace.
Mm. And I think I just hear some relief that you are no longer the family spokesperson for the three of you. You can just let your husband speak for himself to his mother. Yeah, to represent your family also in that instance, which is yeah, so respectful. Sweet. That's a great story. I love, and you also had talked about how you felt like you became a better listener through using the skills too.
Yes. Okay. So duct tape was hard, is hard. Oh my goodness. So I think because I was starting to take care of myself, that was the key. I'd heard about not duct tape, but I'd heard about women, be meek and quiet and, you know, don't be a nag. I'd heard that over and over.
Well,
That never
sure.
stopped. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it never stopped me.
No,
Um,
me
it
neither.
actually sometimes made me more defiant. But that day, because I had cared for myself a little more, um, I decided, okay, I'm going to try the duct tape. He came home from work. I didn't launch into a litany about my day and complaining rant about how tired I was. And no, I just smiled and sat on the couch and asked him how his day was. And he, like I said before, he is slow to speak. Um, and it takes a while to form his thoughts. I think it's wisdom, actually. I'm more of a fast talker. And so he took some time to share, but instead of looking down at my phone or, impatiently saying, okay, can you hurry up? I just listened, put the duct tape on, and he ended up opening up to me about a matter at work that was causing him a lot of stress I had no idea about because he holds his stress quietly. And he just started to share a little bit tentatively. And I just listened. And he said, what do you think I should do? I said, oh, whatever you think. I trust you. And I practiced the I hear you. Um, and he ended up being able to process out loud without me giving any commentary, any advice, suggestions. He actually had a method. He thought, my husband's very generous and he's charitable. And he had a desire to just shower these particularly difficult clients with just going the extra mile and being very courteous to them. And I thought, oh, brother, get a backbone. You got to be assertive. But I just, duct tape. Do you know, he ended up, that matter lasted about 2 weeks and we bonded over it because he would share with me just successes he was having and the progress that he was making with these difficult clients. Those clients, he ended up doing things his way, no Jessica way, his way. And those clients ended up writing him such a glowing report. And they recommend people to him. I got to see my husband shine. Who knows what would have happened if I just jumped in and shut him down. So that's a beautiful, I hope I never forget that.
Oh, that is a
Oh,
beautiful story.
oh
You
yeah.
just bearing witness to your husband, not advising him. And I mean, did part of you feel like, oh, I sure do know what to do here, and I wish I could just tell him right now. I think I should probably
Oh,
tell him.
oh yeah. I've read so much about assertiveness and, I mean, he's an attorney and he passed the bar the first time. He's a very intelligent man. He's also he's just a courteous, but yeah, I thought he's being a pushover. Just
Right,
duct tape.
right. And are you an attorney as well, or no?
Oh gosh,
No.
no.
Okay. 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 But still, it's still, I just relate to you so much, right? Sometimes you say, I know what you should do. Here's what you should do. Right. And you were having no part of it. And it really created amazing intimacy and connection
Yes,
in
and
your marriage.
the very next day he texted me, "Thank you so much, honey, for listening. You're such a good listener, and you're such an example of humility." I thought humility is like my favorite virtue that seems so hard. I'm always grasping for humility. And here's my husband saying, you're such an example of humility.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Working.
gosh. I love it. It does, if it's a good view from the high road, isn't it? To
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well done. I love that. That is a great
And
story.
And duct tape, it's hard. It's still very, I mean, come on, I've only been practicing these skills for a month, but um, it's hard, but it is so worth it. You maintain your peace, your dignity, and I get to hear him, you know, I get to
He's
know
your
him.
beloved. He's your beloved. Yeah. It's his, yeah, his voice, his thoughts. Yeah.
Yes. And I used to criticize his driving because he likes to take the slow lane. He doesn't feel like he has to rush around like I do. And he takes a slow lane. And I was always just, carping on him. And he got to get in the fast lane and giving him all, no, just on the way to church. I didn't say a thing. We were able to arrive in peace and it maintain intimacy, closeness, joy, and save and spare my son from some argument, you know?
Right, right. Well, that's my next question. How do you think this is impacting your son, or has it had any impact on him?
Oh, I know it. Um, I would feel just so desolated when I would see him uh, tense up when Russell and I would argue. And now, in fact, I'm a mere mortal woman, Laura. And just last night, my husband said, "Oh, can you take Noah to preschool tomorrow? I have a call at 8." Oh, in the bad old days, I would have launched into, I tell you to always tell me a week in advance.
Yeah,
And I started to feel anxious.
yeah.
And he knows today is a big day for me. So I was about to give it to him. And I thought, and I saw Noah, who was so happy. And I thought, I've got to step away. So, because I'm about to lose it. So I went upstairs and I got a little dollop of Doyle. I put on your podcast, 3 Ways to Stop Resenting Your Husband. And I just listened a little bit and calmed down. I came downstairs. I said, "Honey, I apologize for being disrespectful I couldn't even finish because he said, 'I'm so sorry, honey, for springing this on you last minute.'"
Oh,
And then I knew this was changing. Well, my son, I think before I went upstairs, my voice, I think my son could sense a change in my voice. It was getting tense. And he said, "No, mama, no, mommy, daddy, cozy." And he
oh,
wants us to stay cozy. Um, he has very few words, my son. He has a little bit of a speech delay, but he knows the word cozy. And I just looked at him. I thought, oh yes, cozy. Yes, he's used to us now being cozy. So that's when I thought I got to go upstairs. Dollop of Doyle. Um, it came downstairs. I apologize for being disrespectful, honey. I couldn't even finish it. He said, "I'm so sorry." And then I just thought, I said, "You know what, honey? I'm just gonna be grateful. It's gonna work out. I'm going to end up enjoy taking Noah to school. I'm probably going to have some positive social interaction, which I need before my interview. Russell knows I'm being interviewed, um, not for this podcast, but he knows I'm being interviewed by a woman who's changed my life. And he said
oh,
yes. He prayed for me before the interview. He sent me I love this. This morning, we had a beautiful rainy day yesterday. And then this morning, apparently there was a rainbow. And I woke up to a text message from my husband, "A special rainbow just for you, on your special
so
day."
sweet.
And, that brought me back to the good old days because we used to send pictures, he especially, of beautiful things in creation that he knew I'd appreciate. And that wasn't really happening. And here it is again, the
The
rainbow.
rainbows are back, literally back. Rainbows.
Yes.
So sweet. Wow. Well done. I'm so impressed with your diligence and just being able to catch yourself in the moment when you're starting to feel anxious and your voice is changing, and to be able to tune into your son and the word cozy, and then step away and come back. And then the argument was about who was going to apologize first, really, right? Like, which is a
Right.
great argument to have.
Right.
So, really, really great job creating peace in your home. What a wise woman you are. What,
But
what do you,
I don't want any listener, I consider the women in this community like sisters. These women are so good. I don't want them to be discouraged like I'm practicing these so well. I definitely have slip ups every single
sure.
day, but it's
Me
different
too.
because, oh yeah, I just say, I speak reassuringly to myself. I apologize for being disrespectful to him, clean up my side of the street, and then keep practicing. This is going to take time. It's a rewiring of my brain.
It is. It is. It does. It is yeah. I mean, even after over 20 years, I feel like I'm still learning and growing in the intimacy skills. So it's just a great way to travel, though. What What do you think you would say to yourself if you could go back in time and talk to Jessica from before, when you were feeling so lonely and wanting that divorce? And you could tell her what you know now, where you're getting rainbows and love letters and just having a peaceful home and having all this snuggling. What would you say?
I think I would, I know it sounds cheesy, but I think I really would give her a hug and kind of soothingly touch her. I think that's what I needed. Uh, I didn't need another cold piece of advice. I needed to be validated, I think, but not validated to resent my husband. Validated like this is hard. This is hard, but um, I I say this with all love and that you don't need to worry about your husband. He's a good man and he loves you and he's growing in wisdom and that wisdom takes years to achieve to come into and you're growing in wisdom. um, I would say, you know, you're beautiful. It's in you that the if you could hear this, I do want you to find something that you enjoy, something that makes you happy, like truly, not that should make you happy, that really makes you happy. Go ahead and do that. Don't let anyone tell you it's idolatrous or selfish. Start treating yourself nicely, nourishing yourself, letting yourself enjoy. And don't worry about your husband. Please give him some space. He's good. He's good. And God is going to send you a resource that's going to bring freedom and relief to you. And it's not what you're expecting. It's not even like a very religious, it's just good, practical, good sense. It's coming. So be patient.
Mm-hmm. I just love hearing how nurturing you sound talking to yourself, like how loving and just like a good mom or right. And that hug, you came in with that hug first. And I just find that so attractive, so appealing. Beautiful response. What's your advice for someone who is where you were and wants what you have now? Where should she start?
Well,
What's your tip?
I I think I think I again would validate her. I know you feel hopeless and discouraged, totally disenchanted, but there is hope. And I would say you might be like I was, burned out on marriage advice. I cannot recommend more heartily to you anything by Laura Doyle. And I know I'm going to sound very culty, but I've put aside everything. I feel like I'd never have to read a self-help book, a woman's book, a marriage book again. This is it. Um, and anyway, you could podcast. There are, over 200 interviews. Um, the books, you can get them at the library, you can buy them and support Laura. There's a Facebook group, there's a free online community. Um, just somehow, just kind of experiment. I think in the beginning was you didn't present yourself as a guru.
Mm-mm.
Um, you were a fellow traveler and you just same thing to these women, just maybe experiment, try it out, give it 2 weeks. And if it doesn't work for you, you can go back to what you were doing before. But I would try it, just give a little taste and see. I pretty much can guarantee that there will be a positive change in your inner life and in your marriage. So, and I think I would also say if and when you start practicing the skills, do be patient with yourself, and focus on your wins, not on how you messed up, but focus on your wins, please.
Well, beautiful and so complimentary. Thank you so much for your support and enthusiasm for this work. I do want to give you the Best Wife Award.
Well, thank you, Laura.
Congratulations for being such a wise wife and being so devoted to the peace and creating gratitude in your home and that intimacy, being a good listener, and becoming so joyful. You've done a wonderful thing. It's a huge accomplishment. And I think the world needs more women like you, Jessica. So
Oh, well,
congratulations.
Laura, the praise is all to you. You really have, I know it sounds dramatic, but you really have saved my life and my marriage. And your work is so powerful and it's so delicious and nourishing and it's full of good nourishment. And I want to thank you. I really do kind of wonder how you got here. It's amazing what you do.
Thank you so much. Well, great job today sharing your story. Thank you for helping me end world divorce. I can tell you're on the mission too. And it's a joy to be traveling along with you. If you want to get your hands on all 6 intimacy skills that make your marriage last and thrive, then get The Empowered Wife, the book that lays them out step by step. No time to read? Well, then get the audio version of The Empowered Wife and listen to it just like you're listening to this podcast. Be one of the thousands of women who has a shiny, amazing marriage because you learn the secrets of women who have shiny, amazing marriages. Get the Empowered Wife book on audio or paperback today. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about what to do if your husband treats you like a roommate. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that our welcome mat says, "Welcome Fall," which I thought was nice until John added a comma. So now it says, "Welcome, comma, Fall."